Welcome to episode 26 of the Views from 314 Feet podcast. My name is Randy Wilkins, and as always, I'm joined by Yankees beat reporter from The Athletic, Chris Kirshner. Chris, how are you?
Doing great here in Chicago. Got a nice steak dinner last night when I came in. Definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah, whenever you go to Chicago, it's like almost required for people to get a steak dinner somewhere in Chicago.
Yeah, I went to Gibson's. When I was covering the Hawks in my last job. The Hawks radio broadcaster is actually best friends with John Sterling. So Steve Holman is his name. So Steve and John, like whenever they get together, they always go to like the nicest restaurants and they wear their suit jackets and all that. And Gibson's is like Steve's like highest recommended restaurant that he's been to in the US. Whenever he's in Chicago, he gets it. He gets the steaks delivered to his home in Georgia.
Oh,
so
nice.
like he's a diehard Gibson's fan. It definitely lived up to the hype. I went with Gary Phillips and Max Goodman last night. It was definitely a good time.
Nice. Yeah, Chicago is well known for their steakhouses and steak restaurants. It feels like there's one like every other corner in one stretch of Chicago. So, yeah, it's always. I've never been to Gibson's, but I know steakhouses in Chicago are like synonymous, kind of like Chicago pizza in Chicago. You know what I mean? Like steak is also in that conversation. So.
Yep. Yeah, and then for lunch later today, I'm going to get an Italian beef sandwich. So check that out too.
Nice. Have fun. I'm not in Chicago. I'm in New York. So I'm in my house getting ready for my softball playoff game later. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. But the Yankees, they're headed towards the playoffs in October. They're definitely going there. But one thing that I don't know if we can label this as a concern, but it's certainly a point of contention at this point is the Yankees' underwhelming performances at home, shall we put it. The Yankees just finished up their longest homestand of the year. They went 5-4. They played the Blue Jays, the Angels, and the Rangers. Not necessarily the most intimidating and dominant teams that you will see this year. And a 5-4 record feels pretty disappointing for a team with title aspirations and very much in the thick of a division race with a talented Baltimore team. So I know it's been brought up more and more recently. Chris, what is your impression of the Yankees' very inconsistent performances at home, and what do you think are some of the contributing factors there, if any, that you can think of?
Yeah, it's definitely bizarre. The other day, Aaron Boone said, like, this team is built to perform well at Yankee Stadium, and I would agree with him. So their struggles, I'm looking at it now. We're recording this before, we're recording this Monday morning, but it doesn't matter because we're in Chicago. But they're 32-27 at home. It's weird. They have like the 14th best record at home this season, and it's not like the fans aren't showing up where they don't have any, home field advantage. Like they've been selling out for several weeks now. Not selling out, but having over 40,000 at home. And I was looking at the stats. There's really nothing to point to as to like, oh yeah, this is the reason why they're struggling. So I honestly don't have any answers as to why they're struggling. I don't know if it's randomness or whatever. I don't know.
So as we're speaking right now, I'm going through some of their pitching performances at home, and I think that is where the problem lies. They're middle of the pack in home ERA. They're 14th. They home runs per 9. They're 30th in the league. I'm also looking here at their K per 9. Pretty good K per 9, but that's more the starters than it is the relievers, obviously. Walks per 9, they're 20th. So the team offensively is built to perform at home, but apparently the pitching isn't. And
Yeah, but the walks and the strikeouts. I mean, I don't know how you chalk that up to like we're in Yankee Stadium tonight, so we're just going to walk more guys. Like
no,
the
but
home runs I get.
well, they're in connection. If you're walking guys and then you give up a bunch of home runs, you're giving up more runs at home. I mean, I think it's all connected back to the home run performance. I mean, they're dead last. So, I mean, there's like multiple moments that I can think of off the top of my head where they've given up big, like, multi-run home runs throughout the season. I mean, Stroman gives up a lot at home, or at least it feels that way. Holmes has done it at home. There's like multiple moments where I think the bad walk rate and the very bad home run rate are like married to each other. So like individually, yeah, like you're not gonna say I'm in Yankee Stadium and I'm gonna start walking guys more than at home than on the road. But when you look at the home run rate and the ERA, it starts to paint a like larger picture of performance at home. I mean, the home run rate is like shocking to me. I mean, I know it's not like I know this stadium has this reputation that really should go away now, but it's not necessarily like the number one hitters park in the league. And for your own pitchers to be dead last at home in home run rate is pretty shocking. Like they're at let's see here, I'm looking it up now. They give up like 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. I mean, it's not good. You know what I mean? Like
It's not. Yeah, it's not good.
yeah, so I mean, it feels like when it happens, when they're giving up a home run, they're not just giving up solo shots. I mean, Rodon had that run where he was just giving up bombs left and right. I don't even think it mattered if it was home or away, but I'm sure that Rodon contributed to that as well. Cole has definitely given up a bunch of home runs at home. So, I mean, I think if there's something to pinpoint, it's kind of like the pitching performance more so than the offensive performance. And I even think in this – I mean, in this recent series with Texas, I mean, they almost blew the game because they gave up, I think, 3 home runs like in a 2-inning span. And then the game on Saturday, I think they gave up a couple home runs. So, I mean, it feels like there is one area that they need to kind of like tighten things up. If we're to say that there's a trend happening at home, I don't know that that's totally it, but there's something there that's popping up that's kind of alarming.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I was looking up to see if it's just left-handed hitters just poking it over the short porch, but it's actually right-handed hitters who have been doing more of the damage at Yankee Stadium. They're last in a home run rate for right-handed hitters, 1.4 home runs per 9, and I don't have it pulled up right now. I think they were like seventh worst for left-handed hitters, somewhere around there. But so that's interesting too, because usually fans think it's just left-handed hitters. They're just taking advantage of the short porch, but actually right-handed hitters have been doing the most damage. And you mentioned the offense not being an issue. They have the third highest home WRC plus. So the offense is doing their job. I think with the Yankees, just in general, if the offense is doing their job, I think they're going to win many games over this last stretch. The offense has looked good. It's mainly just, can the pitching do enough to keep them in games?
Yeah, right.
That's what we saw. That's basically what we saw in Sunday's game. The offense did their job. The pitching barely did enough, and the Yankees won. It's not the greatest thing to have to rely sometimes on scoring, 5+ runs. Obviously, if you score that many runs, you're going to win a lot of games, but it's not always sustainable to think that, we're just going to score 7 runs today and everything's going to be easy. So you just hope that the pitching can figure it out, before October. Do I think that's going to happen at this point? Probably not, because you are what you are. And, it's basically like these next 50-ish games before October, can the Yankees do enough to get their problems in line? They have a couple of starting pitchers who've struggled. Stroman looked good after getting an extra couple days of rest. Can Nestor figure it out? Can Clark Schmidt come back and be a valuable piece of the rotation? Can the bullpen find five-ish guys who Aaron Boone can rely on in October? I don't know. That's also probably asking a lot. There's some things that they definitely can clean up, and if they can clean up these things, I think they're sitting pretty going into October just because of how well the offense has performed. A lot of people want to say it's just a two-man show, but the offense does. I mean, the lineup does feel deeper these days with Stanton and Jazz and DJ's hitting when he's in against left-handed pitching.
Cabrera's been hitting.
Cabrera's been hitting. So there are some good things happening offensively. You just hope that the pitch can figure it out.
Yeah, the Yankees currently lead MLB in WRC plus and WOBA. So I think any legitimate concerns during that stretch where they were not performing well can be put to bed. I mean, I don't think they're going to have an offensive nosedive like they did in the middle of the season, as long as guys are healthy. If Stanton's there, he might have another one of those slumps, but he's looked fantastic, I think, since he's been back, even if the results might not totally match the at-bat quality. I think he's hit the ground running. And I think hopefully he's at the point where he just plays every day now and they're not like building him up anymore. I mean, that home run he hit yesterday was amazing. I mean, he basically did a lunge and like hit the ball on a rope like 380 feet. You know what I mean? Like he's just like exercising and happened to hit a home run at the same time. Like that was crazy. I also liked in that at bat that I don't remember who was pitching to. It was Leclerc. He threw that slider to him and he missed it, and he made the adjustment on the slider that didn't break as much, but he went with the pitch and like smoked it. So I thought that was like a really good sign too, not just the result, but the process there, that he was looking for a slider and stuck with it and put his A swing on it. So I thought that was a good sign if you're paying attention to how Stanton is looking since he's been back. Jazz has been fantastic. A couple like inexperienced gaffes at third base, but that's to be expected. It didn't like kill them in the end. Wells, I mean, we've talked about him a bunch lately. I just feel like the offense is fine. Well, obviously more than fine. That's kind of underselling it, but unless guys get hurt again, I think the concerns about the lineup can be put to bed. I do think the pitching needs to be figured out. The pitching's not good enough. I mean, we're still in August, so thinking about October might be a little bit foolish. But I think for a team that is going to the playoffs, you can start to look ahead. They have to figure out all the things that you mentioned. I don't think Stroman will be on the postseason roster. I don't think that there's just stuff-wise. I just don't think that you can put him in a position to start a game in the playoffs. He doesn't attack hitters. He doesn't have the stuff to attack hitters. You can't like nibble in the playoffs. You'll get crushed. You'll lose. So I don't think Stroman factors into the postseason rotation. It's more just, can you help the team win the division at this point? I would put Nestor in the same category. He's just too volatile and gives up too many home runs to trust him in the playoffs, maybe out of the pen. But even then, I'm not sure how valuable he'll be. But I really think that this stretch, on top of trying to win the division, which is primary, they really need to start figuring out how to get these guys rolling on the pitching side again. Like the pitching's not good enough, in my opinion. And you can look at almost every pitcher that they throw out there right now and have a question mark. And the only person, ironically, since we talked about him for so long and saying that his metrics belied his results for a while, Rodon's like the most reliable guy right now, as Cole still rounds into form. Cole obviously had a good start on Saturday, but they really need to figure out this pitching, both starting and bullpen wise. Like it's just there are too many question marks, and I don't know if Weaver's getting tired, which I would totally understand. This is a lot of innings for him, and he takes on like that multi-inning role. He's been getting hit hard a lot lately. The Holmes thing is like kind of ridiculous at this point. Like he just needs to throw strikes. I mean, I think that's like a big part of the issue here is that his command just goes in and out. I'm not worried about Leiter, but they really need to figure this pitching thing out. There are no more reinforcements coming. I mean, yeah, you could say Efros and Trevino, but I don't know how much they're going to be able to contribute. So I really think that the pitching is the main concern here, and the thing that they really need to harp on to put themselves in a position to really be ready to go for October.
And you didn't even mention Luis Gil. You know, he's on pace for like around 160 innings at this point, and that doesn't include, you know, his October workload, whatever that is. I don't know what the plan is. Like they just continue to say the same thing that, you know, he's fine. We're going to continue riding it out. I mean, I guess you can do that as long as he looks healthy, but it would just be stunning if he ends up pitching, you know, 160 to 170 innings in the regular season, and then, you know, pitches, you know, roughly another 30 or so in the playoffs. Like, is he really going to pitch 200 innings this year coming off of Tommy John surgery? I don't know. Like they continue to, you know, he's starting in this White Sox series. I believe he's starting tonight, Monday night. But yeah, they haven't given any indication that they're planning on lowering his workload at all. The one thing I was thinking about with Heel too is, you know, we've talked before about how he could certainly go into the bullpen and he would be a tremendous boost out of the bullpen. But I was also thinking his command is not the greatest.
Right.
I don't know if like that. I don't know if his lack of command would play well out of the bullpen. Obviously, his stuff is amazing and some of the best in the league, but you know, he does have problems sometimes throwing strikes, and you need to throw strikes if you're coming out of the bullpen. But you know, if they have zero concern about his workload, you have to consider Heel as probably your number 2 starter in the playoffs. Honestly, if they're just going to continue doing this, I personally would have it. If Heel is a starter, I would go Cole, Heel, and Carlos as 1, 2, 3, and then, you know, if Schmidt comes back and looks like how he did prior to his injury, I mean, there's your 4 starters right there, in my opinion.
I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think Clark Schmidt is crucial here, and I think the Yankees. I won't say hope because they're obviously monitoring and guiding the situation and guiding his comeback, but they will be very fortunate if Clark Schmidt can come back, stay healthy, and hit the ground running. I think he answers a lot of questions for them. And we spoke about this with Stanton and his absence really cratering the offense. And it's not a surprise. Other guys have obviously contributed and stepped up, so I don't want to take anything away from anybody. But Stanton comes back, the offense is better and way more dangerous than when he wasn't there. And you can see his impact right away. I think the same could be said about Clark Schmidt getting hurt and the rotation suffering from that injury. Cole comes back. Obviously, that was a boost, but you know he was playing catch up for a long time. Clark Schmidt, new pitcher now. Just combine the two guys. Clark Schmidt was their best starter this year, besides Heel, and for a time we thought he could make the All-Star team. So his loss has been significant, and I think we've kind of underplayed or undersold his impact and influence on the rotation since he's been gone. And I think that we see how important he is to that rotation. And if he can come back, stay healthy, and get back to the pitcher that he was before, then I feel way more confident about the rotation going into the playoffs than I do right now. Because like you said, you have 4 guys that you can rely on to go into the playoffs. And depending on where um, Schmidt is going into October, if he is a starter, then I think that gives you a couple more options for your playoff rotation. Then you can really say, all right, do we want to have this guy pitch on the road or pitch at home? Do we want him to be in a closeout situation or not in a closeout situation? I think that there's a lot of factors that they can consider. And if they do win the division, they can obviously line it up however they want. But I think they'll also have other strategic factors and reasons for kind of lining up the rotation the way that they would like to. Does Rodon pitch better on the road, at home? Like, do we want a lefty to pitch on the, at home or whatever it is? But I think that the variables that go into choosing that rotation are it's better managed if Clark Schmidt is a part of that calculus, in my opinion, rather than you only have 3 guys you can rely on instead of 4.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Should also be noted that Brian Cashman said yesterday on Sirius XM that Schmidt is expected to start a rehab assignment around August 22nd. And, the latest he would be back, Cashman said, would be the second week of September. Now, you're pushing up against obviously the end of the season at that point. So I am interested to see just how much he can build up at this point. They could go the same plan that they did with Cole, where he came back and I believe he was around 60-ish pitches in his first major league outing. So obviously he didn't finish off his rehab assignment, came back early and just finished it off in the major leagues. I don't know if they'll do that with Clark. He does have a history of injuries. I would assume that they would take it slower with him. Cole doesn't have any injury history. Clark does. So I would assume that they are trying to be as cautious as possible, especially with someone who, as you said, is very important and could certainly be the difference between advancing far or not advancing far. This is a separate thought that I had while you were talking, and it kind of occurred to me during the Angels series when they lost 2 of 3. I think this year there's no such thing as a great MLB team this
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
I don't think any of these teams are great. And we're talking about like the pitching, being good enough in October. I feel like if you're a Mariners fan or a Padres fan or a Dodgers fan or Orioles fan, like they probably are talking about similar concerns, whether it's, the offense not being good enough or their pitching's not good enough or their bullpen, or, they have problems with the manager and how he manages the team. I just feel like this year there's just not one great team. I think there are like 5 to 7 good teams who could win it all, and the rest of the league is either mid or awful. And
Yeah.
there's really no in between. It's just there's a bunch of teams who are just meh and they're going nowhere and they have no chance of winning even if they get to the playoffs. And then there's like five to six teams who can win it all, and those 5 to 6 teams have problems. And these next couple of weeks before October, it's can that group do enough to figure out how we can solve our problems now so they're not as big problems?
Well, that's something I wanted to get into in the second segment. So let's go to break here, and then we can continue that conversation right after this break. And we're back. It's Randy. It's Chris. So Chris started this conversation at the end of our first segment, and we want to just jump into it full bore now. Something that I've been saying for a while, both on here and on Twitter, is what you mentioned, that there isn't a great team in the league this year. I don't this could be a separate part of the conversation. I don't think that's good for the league. I think it's always good when you have like one or two great teams and people are chasing them or they're like creating distance. Like, I don't think it's bad to have like an Astros or a Yankees dynasty team in the league. I don't think parity always means good quality. I think the quality of play in the majors this year has dropped. Like, some of these games are there. I I'm not a big fan of it. I think you should have better. I think you should have like great teams, good teams, mad teams, bad teams. That's just me. But that's the world that we're in this year. And in many ways, it saved the Yankees that these other teams could not pull away while the Yankees were struggling for such a long period of time. And we rightfully question, can this team navigate this adversity? They have, to their credit, they've overcome it. The trade deadline made a huge difference with Jazz and the pitchers to a lesser degree, but Jazz Chisholm has made a huge impact on this team. So the trade deadline worked out for them so far. But as you mentioned, there's no great team. So, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but this is probably the Brian Cashman playoffs where, the randomness and the unpredictability of the playoffs will be on full display this
The
year.
crapshoot.
The crapshoot. It's the crapshoot playoffs. So do you think that that's going to be the case, or do you feel like, there's a chance that one of these teams, whether it be in the American League or National League, can get a rhythm and kind of like pull away from the pack and end up being the favorites? Like, how do you think that this is going to play out up until the end of the season?
I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen in the regular season. That there's going to be, like I said, 5 to 6 teams who could win it all. One of those teams is going to get hot in October and be the last man standing. As I was talking to you during the break, it's like, would I be surprised if the Mariners won it all? I don't even think like the Mariners are that good, but they're just not many good teams. They have a lot of good pitching, and pitching does win in October. If they could figure out their offense, like in the slightest, I think they have as good of a chance as anybody, honestly. That's just how I feel about the situation. The Padres, like, I think the Padres could win the World Series.
Yep.
I think the Padres could possibly win the NL West. The Dodgers just haven't been. I thought coming into the season, the Dodgers were going to be incredible, and it's not like a unique thought because I'm sure most people thought the Dodgers were going to be incredible. Yeah, so could the Mariners win it all? I think it's possible. They have really good pitching, and pitching wins in October. If they could figure out their offense in the slightest way, I wouldn't be surprised if they win it all. I think the Padres, if we're looking in the National League, I think they might win the NL West with how they're playing. If they can, get their stars playing like stars, their pitching's been good enough. I certainly think they have enough to win it all. Coming into the season, we probably all thought the Dodgers were going to be incredible, and they just haven't been. They're obviously good, and they're one of the teams that could certainly win it all, but they haven't been at that incredible level that I think many expected. So I think for the Yankees, it kind of works out because they obviously have, you know, several concerns going into October, but they have a really good offense. And if their pitching is just good enough, I do think that, they have as good of a chance of winning it all as anybody. And even when you just look at the roster as a whole, going into October, especially on the American League side, I think it's possible that the Yankees go into October with the best roster.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
not and that doesn't necessarily mean that, they're just going to roll to the World Series. They still stuff still has to go their way, but heading into the playoffs with the best roster in the American League could certainly take them far. And as we've been saying for many months now, there's just not one really, really special team in the American League. The Astros could be in the playoffs, and you obviously have to take them seriously, even though they haven't been great. Um, the Orioles have had so many injuries, especially on the pitching side, and now Grayson Rodriguez is down with a lat injury. Their general manager Mike Elias said it's mild, but it's a lat injury, and sometimes those can linger. And if he's out, like that certainly hurts their chances of winning it all. So I think when we're discussing the hopes of the Yankees in the playoffs, I think they have just as good of a chance as anybody to win it all.
I am shocked that Baltimore didn't do better at the deadline. They overpaid for Rodgers, and Zach Eflin is solid, and he'll factor into things because of the injuries. But I am shocked in a year where the AL is down and at the time the Yankees were like struggling, that they just didn't push more chips into the middle of the table. And I think we don't know what's going to happen. The Orioles can certainly win the World Series this year. I don't want to downplay them. I don't want to undermine them. They have a really good team, and they're capable of going deep into the playoffs. But I have to say, I'm shocked that they just didn't go big game hunting. We talked about it numerous times. They had the system to do it. And if you're going to give up some of the guys that were in the Rodgers deal, why not just put them in a deal to get a Flaherty or like really test the Tigers' will with Skubal? I mean, I understand, like Cashman always gets accused of prospect hoarding, but I feel like that was what Elias did in Baltimore. And then the decision to trade some really good prospects for not a good pitcher is just kind of like I feel like Baltimore left the door open in a way, and they, out of everybody, they had a chance to like really put the trade deadline in a chokehold, essentially, with what they had available to them and what they could have gotten with that inventory, and they just didn't do it. And it feels like that's part of the theme for this division rivalry this year and this division race, but also the league in general. And I know that there are a lot of teams that didn't know if they were in or not in it, but like as usual, when you get to the deadline, you know who's like serious and who's not. I mean, it happens every year. It just happens to go down to the wire a little bit more. And there were a lot of deals this year, not big deals, but they're quantity wise, there were a lot. So I'm surprised at like Baltimore not taking more advantage of like what was ahead of them, because as we've been talking about, the field is wide open. Like there was a chance to like really say, look, this is the year that we're going for it. And we still have a bunch of young guys and we still have minor leaguers, but now we have like a top of the line guy or a number 2 starter that we can really like rely on and give us some starting depth and bullpen depth. Like their bullpen moves have been like iffy as well. Like they haven't been like fantastic or dominant. So it just feels like that's the theme of this season, that it's just like just enough for everybody. And then we'll see what happens. So like bringing it back to the Yankees, I agree with you. There's a chance for the Yankees to go into, if they're healthy, to go into the playoffs with the best roster, at least in the American League. And they certainly have the best 1-2 punch, that if those guys have opportunities to impact the game, I'm obviously putting them ahead of anybody in the league. Like, I don't care if it's the Dodgers duo, Baltimore, anybody. I'll put Judge and Soto number 1 on my list and see what they can do. So, and also now that like Wells is protecting Judge and has made a huge difference. Stanton, Volpe's been in and out. We'll talk about Volpe in the mailbag. Yeah, I mean, I think it really is going to come down to them figuring out their pitching. If they can figure out their pitching, then I don't mind being accused of being a homer here. I feel very good about the Yankees' chances in the playoffs if their pitching is in order. Like, I think at this point, we've said this a couple times, if they can get their pitching in order, they can win the World Series. And I feel confident saying that. If you're going in there and their pitching's still iffy, then it's like, I hope that they pitch well today. And then tomorrow, I'm going to hope that they pitch well again tomorrow. You know what I mean? So it's like, it really just comes down to their pitching, and Holmes is a part of that. And Leiter's going to be a part of that. Weaver. Like, I think it's just up and down that entire staff. They really just need to clean that pitching up where you feel like they're on a roll and they're clicking and can really take advantage of the open field. Because I don't – somebody could win – the Mariners can win the World Series or get bumped in the wild card round or, like, in the division round. Like, get swept. You know what I mean? Like, and you can say that about pretty much every team. Like, I can say that about the Dodgers. I can say that about the Phillies. It just feels like you can say that for pretty much any team that might be in the playoffs. The Twins, I don't think the Twins are going to win the World Series because they're the Twins. I'm just going to say that right now as a Yankees fan. But they could win.
They could.
Win.
I think they have the best record in baseball since like May.
Yeah, but I don't.
Which is wild.
It's wild, but it's also the Twins in the AL Central. I'm just that's like sure. That's my default. Like, people could take that disrespectfully. I don't care. It's like they're the Twins in the AL Central. Until that like changes, then I'm not really gonna get off of that. But yes, they have played well. I mean, they could win the division now. You know, people are hyping up Cleveland, and Cleveland's falling off a cliff. So, par for the course for this season.
I did want to go back to the Orioles for a second and what you said, because they, at least on paper, have so much talent on the major league level and the minor league level. And Corbin Burnes is a free agent at season's end. And, you know, it's not necessarily apples to apples here, but, you know, I think they should be capitalizing on having 1 year of Corbin Burnes.
Mm-hmm.
Corbin is, you know, by far one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, and he can certainly win the Orioles a game by himself in the playoffs. He's that good. So to not take full advantage of that just doesn't make any sense to me because it's not a given. They're not, you know, one of the biggest market teams who, you know, spends at that level. So it's not like a given that Burnes is returning to Baltimore in free agency. You know, I know they obviously have a new ownership group and sometimes new ownership groups go crazy. So it's certainly possible that they give him a ton of money in the offseason. But again, we're talking about the Yankees here. So it's not a given that Juan Soto's coming back, but they will be in the race. I don't know if I can say that about Baltimore because we haven't really seen that out of them in numerous years now. So the fact that they didn't take full advantage of having a season with Burnes doesn't make much sense to me. You know, I thought it was a good idea for them to call up Holiday, and he's looked fantastic.
Yep.
You know, he looks like the real deal. You know, he came up earlier in the season, struggled, you know, went back to AAA, and it seems like he worked on a lot of things there because he really looks the part, and he looks like, you know, he's going to be a problem for the American League East
for many, a long time. Yep.
Yeah, but the fact that their big move was Zach Eflin, like that doesn't do anything for me. Like I know they needed some stability in the rotation. They've had so many injuries, and you know I mentioned Grayson Rodriguez now going down, so they needed something there. But you know, you mentioned Flaherty. You know, they obviously had Flaherty last year. I don't know if it just they felt like it wasn't going to work out again.
Right.
But you mentioned Skubal. They obviously have the prospects to entice the Tigers to at least listen, and they obviously didn't do that. And it's not even just Skubal or the players who weren't traded. They have so much talent that they could have tried to make something happen, but it didn't seem like they did that because with the amount of talent they have, they could make teams who didn't sell
right
because of what they have, and they didn't. And it is the Yankees are certainly lucky that the Orioles didn't do anything during that 40-game stretch. You know, we're sitting here today and they're tied at the top of the division, and the Yankees were playing at the White Sox level for 40% of the season, and we're tied right now.
Right.
So, yeah, it's I think it's a huge miss by the Orioles for not capitalizing because the Yankees should be down like 5 games in the division, and they play 3 games in the Bronx at the end of September. And for the Orioles, like those games shouldn't have mattered
Right,
at that point.
right.
They should have done enough. They should have pulled away. The Yankees should be, secure in the wild card spot, and now they may win the division at this point, especially if they do take care of business in August. They have 3 games against the White Sox. They should win every game. But we are talking about the
Who
Yankees,
knows?
and
Yeah, who knows?
it's very. Would I be stunned if the Yankees lose one of these games? No, I
No.
wouldn't. I would not
I
be stunned.
I will say though, and this feels like at least my theme of this episode. If the Yankees clean up their pitching, in my opinion, they'll win the division and they'll be the favorite going into the playoffs. I think that Baltimore has a very talented roster. I think the Yankees right now have shown that their roster is probably better. Injuries factor into that. I think if you just look at it top to bottom, the Yankees, in my opinion, have a better roster. I think as we said, the Orioles had a chance to make it better, and they quite frankly didn't, in my opinion. I think if the Yankees clean up their pitching and get consistency like they had earlier in the season, then they'll win the division and should be the favorites to come out of the AL. I mean, that's where I'm at now. I think that their offense has responded so well from that horrible stretch. And Stanton's presence to me means so much to this lineup. Just the mere presence of him has altered things for them that I think as long as they're healthy, then I feel confident that the offense is going to take care of business. Judge has not slowed down. Soto has not slowed down. Wells has emerged. I think LeMahieu has helped. Cabrera has helped. Verdugo's a lost cause. I mean, that's the other thing, too. I mean, we haven't brought up everybody's favorite prospect, Jason Dominguez. They do have, like, one more guy that can come up and make an immediate impact. And I think that as September comes around, you will see Jason Dominguez. I mean, I don't think – I think Cashman is playing coy here. I think what you wrote about is spot on with, all the benefits to the organization if they keep Jason in the minors until September. But, I mean, he also factors into this. And if he's playing well in the minors by the time September rolls around, I think he gets called up, and I think Verdugo starts seeing the bench. And that would be the right move. Like, enough with Verdugo. He's not having a good year. I won't say he's not a good player, but he's not having a good year. And there's a very obvious spot where this offense can even take it up another level with Jason's return, I guess, since he was here for 8 games last year, where there's a chance where the offense can be even better than it was last year. Even if he's given average production in September, that's better than what Verdugo has been giving for the majority of the season. So I'm happy that I can say this again. I'm not worried about the Yankees offense. It just comes back to the pitching. And if the pitching can straighten itself out, I feel very good about this team. But right now, the pitching is still an issue. I mean, they made Zach Neto look like Alex Rodriguez in his prime for 3 games. I mean, that was ridiculous. Like, I know he's having a good year, but I mean, he looked like Hanley Ramirez or somebody. So it's like the game yesterday, the bullpen almost blew it. It's just you feel like it feels like they're right there, and then something happens and it kind of like knocks you back. And it's like, can you just figure out a way to iron out the thing that pulls you back to the pack? But I think that there's a chance here that if that's fixed, they can be the team that takes the leap. I'm not sure. I don't look at every single AL team, but I know enough about them to say, okay, I'm not sure you have enough to take that leap. You might have to rely more on the randomness of the playoffs than the Yankees, comparatively speaking, just if you look at the rosters.
Totally. I totally agree with you. I did also want to make one point on Dominguez. Dominguez has played left field, I think, once or twice now. which is certainly interesting because he hadn't played left field at all this season prior to these past couple of games. So I know the Yankees did trade for Cam Eden, who is a center fielder, but the the point of the minor leagues is development for the major leagues. And who gives a shit if Cam Eden plays center field?
Right. Yeah.
Because they would just put Dominguez in center field if
Right.
that's where they wanted to use him. So um, and they could just move Eden to left field because who gives a shit again if you
Right.
win a AAA game?
Right.
But so I did think that was interesting. That could mean the Yankees are preparing for Dominguez to play left field in the majors. It could also just mean that they want Cam Eden in center field because they want the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders to win AAA games.
Yeah.
But the left field is obviously the position that can be improved, and getting Dominguez reps in left field now before he gets called up is certainly the right call for the Yankees to make.
I think it's very entertaining and funny how Brian Cashman plays the media game here. And I know you had mentioned that he was on MLB Network radio and, talking about Dominguez playing left field and, it could be this, it could be that. And, just playing the media game. And it's like, dude, we know what's going on here, man. Like, you see what we see and you know way more than all of us combined. And you know what's going on in left field. And it's like, well, if we're going to keep him till September, you have to like maximize that time. So like, let's get our boy in left field and start getting him used to that position. So when we do call him up, he starts eating away at the worst everyday players playing time. You know what I mean? Like, I know I've made it clear how I feel about Verdugo, but I think it's like justified. He's their worst everyday player. And your number one prospect can play his position. And you're like kind of grooming him to play his position. So it feels like the writing is on the wall. And as long as, again, Dominguez stays healthy, I think most people, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but just going by the level of interest in Jason, even for this podcast, most people's dreams or like hopes will be satisfied in September. I think he's going to take his spot. I mean, I don't see any justification for that not to happen. Or maybe they ease him in and see how he does and then play it out that way and see who's like playing better. He can make it a competition during the season, which is fine and fair. But part of this is like hope and part of this is like what we're seeing. Like, I mean, Dominguez should start taking Verdugo's at bats like as soon as he gets called up.
And also, the Yankees owe nothing to Verdugo. They don't owe him anything. He's a free agent at season's end, probably not returning because, Dominguez is the likely favorite to be a starter, especially if they re-sign Soto and they're going to have to cut costs elsewhere. That's one way to do it. You have a cost control player in Dominguez rather than paying Verdugo whatever he gets, 8 to 12 million, probably the range that Verdugo will get, I assume. I'm just speculating there, but they don't owe anything to Verdugo. He's not a leader in the clubhouse. It wouldn't make waves or anything like that. So I would certainly expect Dominguez at some point, probably in September, to start cutting into Verdugo's time. I don't know if it's just going to be, Verdugo's going straight to the bench and he's just going to play on some days. I would suspect, like what you were saying, making a competition. If Dominguez comes up and is as hot as he was last year, then you make that switch to him playing most of the games during the week. And at that point, I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, that Dominguez is one of their best position players. He gives them the best opportunity of winning in October. So getting him as much playing time as possible in September is the strategy that the Yankees should deploy with him because he's better
Yeah,
than Verdugo. And as I said, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you just said it 5 minutes ago, but even if Dominguez is average at the plate, that is still better than what the Yankees are getting from left field this season. So he doesn't have to be the Dominguez we saw in those 8 games last year where he's one of the best players in the league. Like he doesn't have to do that. Like even if he's average, that is still better than what the Yankees have been getting.
I mean, if he pulls a Shane Spencer in September, this city's gonna go crazy. Like,
Oh,
I mean, not that I'm not expecting that. I'm not putting that pressure on him. Not that like what my feelings or thoughts matter at all in any of this. But like, I mean, if he comes here hot, this place is gonna go crazy. Like, just it's crazy how much enthusiasm there is for him, and with good reason. Like he's kind of have this like mythology around him, and he gave people a tease last year, and he was like remarkable in that short amount of time. He helped them sweep the Astros, and very unfortunate injury. So it kind of like adds to the mystique of Jason, and you know, as you're well aware, like just the the amount of questions we get about him every single week, even when he was like nowhere near ready to play a major league game. It's just remarkable um, how much enthusiasm he elicits from people, and it'd be great to see him play and hopefully do well. And if he helps them win a title, like that guy's already gonna have a very strong foothold in this city and with this fan base. So it's exciting, and everybody knows how I feel about Verdugo. I mean, he just needs to see the bench. Like he's like I've had enough of him. And the weak ground balls, the weak fly balls, like good at bats that turn into like 40-mile-per-hour pop ups, like you know the face plants. It's just time. It's time to look at something else if you want to win a title. Like I'm sorry, like I'm all out. If he does something good for the team, then I'll be happy. But I think Jason time should be arriving pretty soon as we turn the calendar. So with that said, we're gonna go to break, come back with the mailbag, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, we're back. Let's jump right into the mailbag from Anashe. I think I pronounced it correctly. Hey, Chris and Randy, Jason aside, thank you for putting Jason to the side. I wanted to know if there's any likelihood of Caleb Durbin being a potential call-up candidate on September 1st, or if that's something they will wait to do till next year. The Yankees have shown that they're very high on him, and he can play multiple positions in the infield as well as the outfield, and he looked like someone they might have called up before his hand injury caused him to miss a few months. Also, has anyone asked Boone why Trent Grisham doesn't get more starts, if at all, against left-handed pitching, despite being a good hitter against them the majority of his career?
as for Durbin, they're limited with how many players they can call up now. Like if it was in the past where we were talking about 40-man rosters, then yeah, Durbin would be up. Um, I just think that you have Dominguez, who's a likely candidate to get called up. And then you have Rizzo. Who knows what they decide to do with him? If they decide that they want him on the bench, John Birdie, who's also a utility infielder who's under contract. I just think there's more players higher on the pecking order than Durbin. Like if someone got hurt, let's say Volpe got hurt or Glaber got hurt, then yeah, I think like he would be in consideration at that point. But if it remains status quo, I would be surprised about Durbin getting called up. I think he's certainly going to be in the race next year to be the team's starting second baseman. As you said, they are very high on him. And this was back in spring training when, I was talking to coaches and they were mentioning his name. This was, before his season. I know he got hurt, so he missed some time, but the Yankees are certainly very high on him. And with the expectation that Glaber's not coming back next season, there's going to be a need at second base, whether they fill it internally or externally, I do think that Durbin will be one of the guys who gets consideration. As for Grisham, I don't think anyone has asked. He's a fourth outfielder, and there's other things to ask about than why Grisham is not starting against lefties, in my opinion. And it's not to like diminish the question, but there are just other things usually that we have to ask about, so we can't get to everything. But I do think that Grisham, for his role, has played it well. He's been a very valuable fourth outfielder, and when he's been starting, like he's produced. He has production from the left side of the plate. His swing looks great at home in Yankee Stadium. And obviously his defense has been good. He's made a couple of, bad plays in the outfield, but for the most part, he's been really, really good defensively.
The Yankees have a sneaker roster crunch coming up. I mean, they have a lot of vets that are coming back from injury soon. You have Jason. They have a lot of decisions they have to make for this roster, and I think the focus has been on how they've been playing in the games. But at some point, they're going to have to like figure some things out, like both on the pitching side and the position player side. Like, what do they do with Rice and Rizzo, Birdie, Jason? They don't have enough spots for all the guys that they have, so they're going to have to make some tough decisions here. We don't need to talk about it now, but I'm very curious what happens with Rizzo and Rice. Rice has been losing playing time. The Yankees will lean towards a veteran over a rookie, if the options are there. I would not be surprised if Rizzo is your starting first baseman in the playoffs. Just knowing the Yankees' history, I think that they'll say Rice got a lot of great experience here, but we have Rizzo here for a reason. He's healthy. We know he struggled, but we're going to rely on the veteran presence, trademark statement there or phrase there. And I fully expect Anthony Rizzo to be their starting first baseman when he's healthy. I mean, I just going off.
I don't know. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I do think that he is a very valuable member of the clubhouse, and he's very respected. And certainly they usually defer to veterans over rookies or players with less experience. But, Rice doesn't have the results, but it's a similar situation to what was going on with Wells in April. Wells wasn't getting results, but we saw that the metrics were really good. And once he started to, have luck on his side, you did see that Wells could be something special. And that's what we're seeing now. And I think with Rice, similar metrics where they're very encouraging, doesn't have the results necessarily. But I think at this point, I think Ben Rice helps the Yankees more than Rizzo with just how they play.
I don't disagree, but we're in August and September, not April. So they don't have enough time as they did with Wells to see, okay, will the results match the metrics? I agree with you. So, I would prefer to have Rice. I'm just kind of thinking along with what they would normally do, especially for the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I don't
100%.
I think it's going to be Rizzo. I would prefer Rice, but if Rizzo demonstrates that he's healthy, then I think ultimately it's going to be him. And I think the Yankees will say, well, before he got hurt, he figured some things out and was hitting the ball better.
Please, that was like 5 games. But I know they would do that. But
that's what they're going to say.
Give me a break.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like, I'm all on the Ben Rice train, but I would be surprised if they had the two options going into the playoffs that Rice beats out Rizzo, even though he probably should.
It's going to be it's certainly interesting. Rice is obviously still learning a position. Rizzo is, he's had Gold Gloves in his career. He knows what he's doing at first base. He's not learning the position on the fly.
Right.
Just the one thing that I'm thinking about is know, basically since Rizzo's concussion, he hasn't been a
He's been
productive
bad.
player.
Yeah, he's been bad.
Yeah, he hasn't been good, and there is lots of potential there with Rice. And if you're just judging off of the potential versus someone who we've seen over the past calendar year not be good, I would take potential over someone who has demonstrated that they may not be a good player anymore.
I'm with you. I'm in agreement. I hope I'm wrong, but my gut tells me the Yankees will go with the old guy. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it would be a very Yankees thing for them to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Agreed. Joshua Finchler. Do you guys think Efros or Trevino have enough time to become impact leverage pieces in October? Feel like we really need one more. Holmes is a good pitcher, but his limiting factor of being contact heavy with shaky infield defense is apparent. We will have to live with that, but can still use another 7/8 inning guy with Weaver and Leiter showing cracks. Okay, I want to start with this one. I have a couple of things to say here. I don't think Holmes' limiting factor is contact. I think it's his command. Like, if he can just throw strikes, he doesn't give up hard contact. Now, from time to time, yeah, he might give up a hole like that Garcia hit yesterday. The issue with that wasn't the soft contact. It was just that it was a poorly executed pitch. Like, it was in the middle of the plate. Like, to me, his limiting factor is his command. If he can throw strikes or throw like enticing enough pitches that have guys chase, Holmes is like really hard to hit. It's his command. He helps out too many hitters by walking too many batters. Like the Red Sox game, he walked guys. Yesterday, he walked guys. That ridiculous game before the All-Star break in against Baltimore, he's walking guys. Like, it's his command. You can deal with the contact because the contact's not good, and sometimes you'll find holes. It's that the problem is that contact and the holes that they find sometimes are combined with bad command. Like, he's just giving way too many free base runners at the wrong time, and it's like whenever he has a problem, almost always there's like a walk or two that is included in the inning. So it's like, yes, it's the contact, but not really also because he's giving free passes to guys, and he gives free passes to guys that he should just be going after, which is also annoying. Like, there's certain guys that he should just dominate, and he's nibbling or like not sure which pitch he wants to throw or which pitch is feeling better that day. To me, it's like the Holmes problem is more one of command than the contact. And I know we talked about swing and miss, but he has such filthy stuff that if he can corral it, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, in my opinion.
Yep,
I also,
I agree with it. With Holmes too, it's I know a lot of people talk about like him being more contact oriented than strikeouts. Um, he does get a lot of strikeouts.
yeah,
I do think that's been somewhat of a misconception with Holmes. He has 9.56 Ks per nine. I mean, everybody thinks that Emmanuel Clase is the best closer in baseball. Well, guess who has a higher K to 9 ratio than Clase? Holmes. So he does strike out guys. He's striking out more than one batter per 9 innings. And um, sometimes with Holmes, as Josh mentioned, like the defense needs to be better behind him. And again, if you're pitching a contact, sometimes the balls find holes, as you said, and you can't control that. But I would rather have a pitcher like Holmes who is limiting soft contact, because a lot of the times if you're doing that, you're doing things how you should. Like, you don't want to give up lasers, because lasers, go for home runs or they find gaps, and we're talking extra bases here. As long as Holmes continues to do what he's doing, I know he's frustrating to watch sometimes, but he is good. He is one of the best closers in baseball. And I know some fans may scoff at that, but he is. He's really, really good. And I honestly think going into the offseason, he is a free agent. Like, if they could bring him back somehow, and have it not affect their pursuit of Soto, truthfully, I think he should be considered as someone who they should bring back because they don't have another option really to close games right now.
Yeah, I think they absolutely need to bring Holmes back because they're going to end up paying big on the free agent or trade market regardless. They don't have a closer. I mean, there's nobody there, like you mentioned. They obviously Soto is priority number one, but the second priority to me is Holmes. Like, because they're going to end up paying more one way or the other if they don't bring Holmes back. So they've kind of like put themselves in that position where they don't really have a choice. If Holmes leaves, they have a huge hole in their roster that they're going to have to like pay significantly one way or the other to fill. So, I mean, I would think that they would try pretty hard to bring Holmes back, and it would just impact the rest of the roster. But I mean, you know, you rather go with the guy that you know than the guy that you don't know. You know what I mean? If in that situation, because they, like you said, they don't have a backup. And in regards to Efros and Trevino, I have no faith that they'll be impactful players at this point. Efros has been rehabbing for like over a month now, and I don't even think he's throwing that hard still.
Yeah,
And
I mean he's not he's not rehabbing. They optioned him to
well,
AAA
they optioned him,
because
right? He's not ready.
they don't feel like he is good enough right now. The
Yeah,
Yankees are telling you they don't think Efros is good enough right now. And as for Trevino, Cashman said that he's expected to start a rehab assignment um, next week. You know, it feels like Trevino hasn't pitched since the Obama administration at this point. So I'm not expecting him to be someone who's on the postseason roster.
yeah, and I
It's nice
was
that it's nice that he's coming back, but you know,
right.
I don't think he's going to be on the postseason roster. He hasn't pitched.
Yeah, and I think if there's anybody who might be able to help, who I don't even think will be able to help that much either, looking at it right now, is Ian Hamilton, and I don't know if he can get back in time and be effective. So, yeah, I don't think those two guys should factor in much until they can prove it. And in terms of Weaver and Leiter, I don't think they're showing cracks. I mean, I think sometimes you get beat, sometimes you have bad stretches. But I don't think there's. I'm not concerned about Weaver or Leiter, at least not yet. I mean, sometimes you get beat. It's baseball, so I don't think they've shown cracks. Matt Imbronia, one of the OGs of Views from 314 Feet. Good to hear from you, Matt. He has a question about Anthony Volpe. After a piping hot start to the second half, Anthony Volpe is now 0 for his last 20-something at bats with 0 walks, signaling he's repeating his usual boom-bust cycle. What do you guys think he needs to do to avoid these big lows after big highs? Keep up the great work, love the pod, etc.
He,
I don't
yeah,
know. This might be who he is.
that's what I was gonna say. And it's not to demean Volpe and say like this is just what he's going to be for the rest of his career. He is 23, so maybe at some point he figures it out. But as of like now, you know, we're 2 years into his career. That's just what he is. That's just what we only can judge off what we've seen, and what we've seen is Volpe is going to have 2 weeks where the Yankees puff out their chests and say, "Look at us! Like we developed this guy, and he's the second coming of Derek Jeter." And then he's going to have 3 weeks where it's like, how is this guy the starting shortstop for a team that is trying to win a World Series?
Right.
You know, he's now 0 for 23. And he's looked terrible in these at bats, like really bad, like
Yep.
really, like not even close
Yep.
to like making any contact. And yeah, I mean, we're 2 years in, and you know, we thought that the leap was going to come. It feels like, you know, when we were talking after the All-Star break, how he had that stretch, and it's like, oh yeah, he figured things out, and this is who he should be. It feels like that's just gone down the toilet after these last few games now. I don't know what to make of him. I don't know how to evaluate him. He's difficult to evaluate, at least offensively, in my opinion, just because like he has stretches where it looks good, but he just can't get any sort of consistency. Like if he could just balance out the very highs with and the very lows with like an in between, like then you have something going. But there's really no in between with Volpe. It's either really really good or really really bad, and that is it. He's gonna have stretches where he looks great, and he's gonna have stretches where he looks terrible, and there's just nothing in between with him. And that's obviously the next area of growth for him is just trying to develop some sort of level of consistency at the plate because it's now over 1,000 plate appearances of like the same thing over and over and over again. And also, Matt made a good point with him not walking. Like even if he was bad, like at least he's getting on base, but he's not even getting on base because he doesn't walk and he swings at everything. So it's a problem. The Yankees have to figure this out. Volpe needs to figure this out. It's probably not happening this year because we're in mid-August, and as I said earlier, at some point you are what you are at this point in the season, and this is what Volpe is in year 2.
Yeah, I mean, he's a streaky hitter that's still developing. I mean, it is what it is. Like he's like you say, he's gonna look really good at times. He's gonna look really bad at times. Just gotta hope when October comes around, he's hitting. But thankfully, a bunch of guys are like picking up the slack for him right now, and it's only 20 at bats. Like they've been 20 bad at bats, but like he did look good before that, and it's 20 at bats. You know what I mean? So he's just a streaky hitter that's still trying to figure out the type of hitter that he is on the major league level. I mean, I think that that's part of it too. Like I don't think he has a true hitter's identity on the major league level yet, and I think that comes with time. You wish that it happened sooner, but I think we both agree what that profile should be for him on the major league level. But for him to do it consistently might take a little bit more time for him. I do want to point out that he's like right outside the top 25 in overall WAR for players in the majors. And he's like 7th in FWAR for shortstops not hitting that well. So like he is like greatly contributing to this team. Like he's having overall a good season. The offensive side needs to be more consistent and more impactful. Like that's pretty obvious, but like he's having a good year and he's made a big difference for this team. It might not just be in the way that we would expect from shortstops like in modern day baseball, but like he's around like William Contreras and Corey Seager and Kyle Schwarber and Colton Cowser, and he's near Vlad Jr. You know what I mean? Like in overall FWAR. So like he's doing something to help the team win, which is a positive. Just his offensive side obviously is going to take a little bit longer to develop and settle so we can figure out exactly who he's going to be as an offensive player. So, he's helping, but you want him to help more.
Yeah, he's certainly helping. I just think with like WAR in particular, like his WAR is going to be higher because he plays shortstop and he plays really good defense and he runs the bases well. Like, would I say Volpe is one of the top 25 players in the sport? No, not even close. Would I rather have Vlad on my team than Volpe? Yeah.
I don't.
They do different things, but like, I would rather have Vlad Guerrero on my team than Volpe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, but like, I think FWAR has a great value because I think a lot of times we, as people that observe baseball, give a lot of weight to offense and downplay defense and base running. Like one thing,
but it's like the same. It's the same conversation that people are having, Royals fans in particular, over the MVP race. Bobby Witt has a higher WAR than Judge. Does that mean he's the MVP?
Well, Judge is higher now.
Judge is the well, yesterday or 2 days ago, Witt had a higher WAR. and everybody's like, oh yeah, Witt's the MVP. No, he's not the MVP. So because he plays shortstop, Witt, and he plays shortstop extremely well, and obviously he's a good base runner. He's getting a lot of WAR points because of that. But when you look at it objectively, it's like, would you rather have Aaron Judge, who is having one of the greatest offensive seasons ever, or would you rather have Witt? Me personally, I would rather have the player who's having a season unlike many others and in baseball history. And baseball has been played basically since George Washington was president. Like, it's the freaking oldest sport. And he hasn't done, like, we haven't seen an offensive season like this in,
Yeah, but
outside of steroid users.
But I'm not debating or contesting that. Like, my basic point here is that, like, the values. Now, I'm not saying Judge and Witt, because Judge is having a historical season. If Judge was having more like a regular like Judge season that he's had in other years, then you can make the case that Bobby Witt Jr. is the MVP. But like, Judge is having like a historic, there's no real comparison here outside of like Babe Ruth or like Lou Gehrig. So like, that feels obvious in the context of like an MVP discussion. But I'm saying, like, in terms of everyday contributions to a team winning games or losing games, I don't think the gap is that much bigger between Vlad Guerrero and Anthony Volpe because of their contributions in all phases of the game to help a team win a game. So like, Vlad Guerrero cannot play defense. He can't run the bases. Is he a better hitter than Volpe? Yes. I mean, that's obvious. But like, if you're taking all three phases into the game, is the gap that significant? I don't think it is. Like, and like, WAR is basically measuring that part of it. So to me, like, would I take Vlad? Yes. I'm not like blind. But do I think Vlad this year in 2024 is significantly a more impactful and influential player in winning than Anthony Volpe? I don't. Like, the Blue Jays are not a good team, and he's having a good year.
Yeah, but that's not Vlad. That's not Vlad's fault.
Yeah, but I mean,
that's not Vlad's fault.
I'm just saying in general, if he was a more overall better player, like if he was a defender at the level of like an Anthony Rizzo, they win more games. Like, I mean, that's part of it. That's why the measurement is there. So like, if you're looking at all three phases of the game, I do not think that there's a huge gap between 2024 Volpe and 2024 Vlad. They're just doing it in two different ways. So like,
yeah, I mean, I certainly get that. Me personally, I would rather have the guy who has like a 160 WRC plus than someone who plays good defense and runs well, because like you can make that up in other areas. I feel like you can have a decent defender. You can have Oswald Peraza at shortstop and still be similar, because Peraza is a really good glove. Peraza runs well. I just don't see. Me personally, I just would rather have the player who can hit the crap out of the ball rather than someone who is this streaky. And yes, he's a good defender. Yes, he's a good base runner, but you can have other. He's replacement level, in my opinion, with regards to that, because they have someone in the minors in Peraza who could basically do the same thing.
I mean, Peraza's not on the team, and he's not going to be a Yankee. So like, somebody in the organization doesn't believe that. So like,
yeah, but he can do the same things whether he can hit or not.
But
like, that's obviously why he's not on the major league roster. I'm just saying he is as good defensively and he can run as well as Volpe.
Right, but I don't. Peraza's not going to have a shot with this team, and he didn't have a shot when.
Oh no, I don't. Yeah, I don't think he will. He's a. Tim is getting upset that we're arguing over Anthony Volpe.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, again, I would take Vlad. I'm not. That's not what I'm like contending. It's just that contributions to like winning, for me, more times than not, the weight is put into offense and defense and base running or ignored. It's not even like a Volpe Vlad discussion, really. I mean, you can have this conversation about two players that like are distinct in one area, and I would still say the same thing. That's why, like, back in the day, for those that remember, I brought up the Griffey Trout debate. Griffey's a way better defender than Trout. So like I would have taken Griffey just because overall one is impacting on in all three phases more than the other, even though one is a better offensive player than the other. So for it's just a matter of preference. And like for me, like I just think defense has to factor in more than people give it credit to. Would I take Vlad over Volpe? Yes. I mean, yes. But like I'm just saying the contributions in other facets of the game should have as much weight or more than what people give to them. So like it's not even a conversation about Volpe and Vlad. It's more the evaluations when we make these comparisons. Like I don't think Witt should be penalized because he plays shortstop and plays it well when you talk about the MVP conversation. It's just that Judge is playing on another level that no one can match. That's why it's not a race. But like Witt should get credit for the fact that he's the best shortstop in baseball. Like even if you compare Witt and Gunner's not in the conversation because of his defense. His defense fell off a cliff. You know what I mean? So it's like, I guess like my contention in general is that when we talk about these players, the other aspects should get as much attention or like respect when like making these when having these discussions than they do. Like I just feel like a lot of times people just go, "Oh, well, he hits X, Y, and Z, he's better." And it's like, well, he stinks off defensively. You know, and like people have said that when they talk about Soto and Witt. And I think it's a legitimate case. Soto cannot play defense at the level of Bobby Witt. Like it's not remotely close. So like I feel like that conversation is much closer and has more validity than say Witt and Judge, just because the difference in defense really does factor in. So that's what I'm saying. It's not like one over the other per se if you're like picking individuals, but I just feel like in general certain aspects of the game are like downplayed in favor of others, and offense gets too much weight from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does because that's the easiest thing to quantify. You know,
Right.
even though we have defensive metrics, you know, it's still kind of blurry as to like how it's judged and how the metrics are calculated. Whereas with um, offense, it's easily quantifiable, and even base running, like it's hard to measure base running, and the impact that guys have on the base paths. But again, I think Volpe for year two overall, like I do feel like it is a disappointment. Yes, he's good defensively. Yes, he can run well, but I think everybody expected more out of him, and he hasn't delivered. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean he's not going to deliver in the future, but you know he has been disappointing this year.
No, yeah, offensively for sure. Yeah, I mean he should have taken a leap. But I think it goes back to what we talked about. That like I think we were both encouraged by the swing changes, and then it ended up not being what we thought it was going to be, or it took away from like
Mm-hmm.
what he was actually good at. So yeah, I mean he needs to improve offensively for sure. I think he's going to have the same questions going into year 3 that he had coming into year 2, and it's on him for sure. But I do think he's helped the team, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, he has because he's a really good shortstop defensively, and he runs the bases really well. And not many Yankees run the bases well, and he is one of them.
yeah, the streakiness is like weird though. I mean, it just feels like he's in between approaches at times, and
Mm-hmm.
he needs to. I think he also just needs to figure out who he wants to be, and then build a plan around that. You know what I mean? Like he's been, not only has he been streaky, but he's been two different types of hitters, which is not good. You know, he was like the slappy contact guy in the first half. Then he turned into like a power guy. And it's like, well, which one do you want to be? You shouldn't be like two totally different profiles in the same season. You know, like that's not good. It's like having,
and it's hard to be good at it, either approach when you're 70 games in one approach and then 30 games in the other approach. It's hard to be good at something if you're just not sticking with it fully. And obviously he ditched the approach, even though he said he didn't make any changes over the All-Star break.
which was also ridiculous to say. I mean,
it's like we have eyes. Come on.
Yeah, like be for real here. Yeah, who are you, Anthony Volpe? That should be if we still had a blog and you didn't write about it, that would be what I would write. Who are you, Anthony Volpe? Let us know who you are. So, Matt, thanks for the question. It led to a spirited discussion about Anthony Volpe, and war and statistics and Griffey and Trout. That conversation will never die, apparently, on Twitter. All right, thanks for all your questions. We appreciate it. Chris, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm excited to get the campfire milkshake at whatever the hell the White Sox stadium's called these days. That's the only good thing about the White Sox, I've heard. So I'm excited to get one.
Have you been to the stadium before?
I have.
Okay.
As a fan.
Oh, okay.
Pretty ugly stadium. Nothing really appealing about it.
Yeah. I've never been there.
There's nothing. There's nothing appealing about it.
I've actually never seen a baseball game in Chicago. I haven't been to Wrigley or whatever White Sox stadium is called now.
Yeah, Wrigley definitely lives up to the hype. It's awesome.
Yeah, I need to go out there. There's only one stadium that I will refuse to go to, and that's Fenway.
Why?
I hate the Red Sox, and I don't give a shit about that building. I don't care about its history. I could care less.
That's funny.
Like I could care less about Fenway Park. And when we trolled the Red Sox fans with the captain poster right outside of Fenway, that was as close as I'll ever get to Fenway as an adult.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I mean, I'll take that and say I've been to Fenway through living vicariously through a billboard. But I hope to get to Wrigley one day. But Fenway, I don't think I'll ever go there. I have no interest.
I do like Fenway.
Why? What about it?
I mean, it's just historic. Like you walk in and it feels like old Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Like you walk in and it just feels like, oh yeah, shit's happened here.
Yeah,
that's just the feeling you get when you walk in there.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you have that feeling. I won't experience that feeling. I'll do that for Wrigley Field, and reminisce about old Yankee Stadium.
No, Wrigley you should definitely get to because
I want to. No, I definitely want to. There's a couple stadiums that I definitely want to go to, and Wrigley's one of them. I think my favorite non-Yankee. Well, I don't even know if Yankee Stadium, the new one, is my favorite, but Dodger Stadium is still my favorite non-Yankee stadium.
Same.
Yeah,
love Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, it's awesome. Just don't sit on the first base side when it's when the sun is out.
Yeah, it's tough.
Man,
it is tough.
It's intense. That sun is intense on the first base side. So, all right. Well, Chris, thank you. That was our review of the Major League Baseball stadiums this week. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. You can also find us on YouTube, channels of the same name. Thank you for listening, and we will speak to you all next week.